Hello, humans. It's me. I don't know how to begin this. I wanted to make a behind the scenes for part 50 because every episode has its unique challenges that I've made so far, but there were a couple that I just wanted to talk about for this video specifically. For this whole video, I'm mostly going to be using clips from the actual video as B-roll because I spent so long working on this stupid video and I made it and it's mine and I can do whatever I want with it. Which goes to my first point, which is this video was not only in length, it's not the longest video I've made, but as far as how long it took to make, whether it was animation, whether it was the posts, like, these videos have become very complicated to make, and this one was no exception. It's not the longest it's taken to make an episode, but it did take a couple months, and it was a little bit on and off. I think I made, like, 3 or 4 Krugs while I was working on this video, which is absurd. The video ended up being around 13 minutes long, at least on the animation side, which is not the longest one I've made. The longest one I made was actually the episode right before this, which was part 49. Now, part 40 says the video is longer, but not purely the animation. What I'm talking about is how much runtime of, let's say, the season videos will actually be in a video, and that's why part 49 is my longest. But that didn't take the longest because that was a slower episode. And a lot of these videos should have been split up into, like, these last 2 parts I worked on should have been split into at least 4 videos, but I'll get to that in a second. But first I wanted to talk about how with making these long videos, weird things occur where I've been working on a project for so long that I sometimes mix up past events with current events of the videos I'm working on. For example, I was working on a scene that kind of had to do with a comedy scene with Russell, and I was thinking, oh shoot, will this clash with a similar moment that happened earlier on in the season that I need to account for different videos? Am I doing something that's like this too similar? And I ended up being fine with the problem, but not before I realized that this issue I had in this moment that I'm thinking back on to compare it to was in this very same video. Imagine you think, oh man, I need to like remember back to my past videos to make sure I'm not messing up continuity. And it's like, no, this is, you're thinking about the beginning of the video that you've been working on for the last 2 months. I had a grandpa moment because of this video, because of how long it took to make, which goes to something that I wanted to say about longer videos, which is even if you're just making a video that's twice as long as your normal video, so like I'm making a Triangle versus Monkey that's 12 minutes instead of 6 minutes, okay? If I have a video that's twice as long, it's going to be 3 times as much work, at least. So imagine how much bigger and more ambitious a lot of these episodes that I've been working on have been recently. That's why they've taken so long to make. That's why episodes like part 40 took so long to make as well. I think part 40 and part 39 were my longest time spent on episodes, but these last 2 I've worked on have been competitors. So that's how I describe like a snowball effect of working on longer videos. That's why it's much more manageable to be working on a ton of shorter videos, which is what Triangle versus Monkey usually is, or even any of the videos on my channel. I usually go for more shorter videos, even though I want to make the GVMs full and entertaining, which is why these last 2 episodes in particular were so long when they should have been split up into a couple different episodes. Like, think about it. Instead of having 2 super long, like 12 to 13 minute videos, I could have had like 4 like 6-minute videos or 7-minute videos. Like, there was the potential to do that. But I wanted the videos to be full and entertaining, especially since 49 and 50 were going to be the lead up to the 50th episode. And I didn't want the 50th episode to be one of the slower story building ones, even though that's how I progressed the plot in the videos. And plus, I know you guys care more about the action than the story building. It's not, don't feel bad about it. I just know that it's true. Plus, a bunch of payoffs and stuff happen during your average action scenes and stuff. At least for part 50 and part 49. I can guarantee you more happened in part 50, and it was the action episode. Also, when I'm making an action episode, it takes way longer to make, but that's kind of obvious. Fighting is a little harder to do than talking, but there's a reason that the talking type of episodes take a long amount of time as well. Speaking of story, this episode in particular has had a ton of story revelations that I've been building up to since the beginning of this season, which I was super excited for, and especially plans that I've made since I've finished season 3 are now coming through to fruition. But that's how it works with all the episodes, kind of. But like when I get to these key moments, like the reveal of the fact that all the other people that were brought back from their universe are clones of their former selves that are still passed away, which is what they thought. I know that some people in the comments were confused, thinking, oh wait, are they all clones, or even Triangle and Monkey clones? Since some of you guys haven't seen some of the older episodes, I'll give you like a refresher. Triangle and Monkey and Ghidorah are not clones, and they believe that they are the only ones who survived out of the bunch. And that's kind of made clear by the fact that all of these people from their previous universe are brought back to life through cloning, not their actual selves. So it isn't the real them. That's why they're so hesitant about revealing that to them, is why would you want to know the truth of you being a fake version of yourself? So that's where the dilemma is. That was a big thing that I led up to. There's a couple other character-specific moments and motivations that are starting to get closed off or are being developed even more, mainly with Triangle and Monkey. But Cole has his own character that I'm trying to build up right now. Monkey's specifically, and not to spoil too much, is the fact that he doesn't want to go through what they are right now. He sees the changes happening, whether they're good or bad in Triangle's eyes, being changes overall a bad thing to the life that he was just starting to get comfortable with. And the contention there is that Triangle can see that they can take this opportunity to make their lives better, especially since Monkey doesn't remember how their old world was. And he doesn't know the potential of, like, even his family coming back. See, Kong isn't even excited by the prospect that he has a brother, because his brother coming back after being gone and not being a part of his life, not that he ever knew him because Monkey lost his memory, is a threat to the current life that he was just starting to get comfortable with. Something I am going to reveal in the full season video, and I'm fine with spoiling it here, it's not super important, but it gives context to this episode specifically, is that Monkey specifically had a lot of investment in building this house of theirs, this home that they've been building up throughout the seasons. It's also symbolic of, like, the life he's been trying to build up to this point, and he's been really content with it. You can see that when they get the couch, he's very happy with the couch and happy with the house and how everything is, because he's finally starting to get comfortable compared to the only things he remembers, which is being chased by the militia and such. But Triangle, having his old memory, knowing what their life used to be and could be, he sees this as somewhat of a downgrade. He doesn't hate his life, but he sees that things can be better. And so he sees all these different things as a chance to move towards making his life even better, instead of just being semi-content. So that's where their personalities and their goals do collide. And there's been semi-drama created off of that. And the reason that Triangle specifically tells Monkey to grow up is because Monkey's motivation is very selfish compared to Triangle's, which is, there is some self-interest there, but it's mainly for the groups overall, especially when the idea is that you are bringing people back from which they were gone, the ability to regain what he has lost. So I thought that was worth bringing up and mentioning. Of course, not everyone who sees the videos will see this behind the scenes video, but I just hope that you are interested in hearing me talk about those motivations for the season. And that's only what I've kind of shown off so far, or at least what the attempt is. Generally, I want you guys to get it not only through what I say behind the scenes, like straight up tell you, but to understand these motivations and these characters through what I do. So I want you to, if you can, as an exercise, instead of telling you the character that I'm trying to build with Cole, if you are interested, write down below what you think I'm trying to create Cole as a character, like what type of person he is, what type of motivation he has, what he leans towards. Some of it's more obvious, some of it isn't, but for especially the last couple episodes, I've been slowly hinting at like what he's all about. I'm curious to see how well that's sort of translated, because honestly that plays into the videos, is there is a little bit of work going towards some of the subtleties of it, but I don't know how effective it actually can be. It would be interesting to hear from you guys about that. Now, hard segue, especially since I don't want to say too much on that matter. Speaking of the house that they were in, for this episode specifically, because the fight was going to be happening here, I had to figure out the whole layout of the house. And what I mean by that is to make sure that everything is consistent with all the rooms and the areas that I've been showing off in previous episodes, which in my head, I've had a mental map of what the inside of the house looks like, where all the rooms go, where the kitchen is, where the main living room is. So I put it all out on paper to make sure that when I do go into making this episode that I'm not completely goofed up and messed up in how the layout's going to be. But it turns out when I put it to paper, I had to do a little bit of distortion and such to make the rooms work, but generally it all fit together really well. I was surprised that the mental map that I had been creating, and some of it just winging it as I go, actually all fit together very well as like a consistent room in a house. And I actually have the drawing for you guys. I'll probably put it up on screen if I can find it. And it's funny and ironic that I decided to do all this and finally have a layout for their home base, for their headquarters, when it's the episode where it's being destroyed. So I don't have to worry about the layout of this place much longer at all. I am eventually going to add scenes that are placed prior to this episode. Like I said, I'm going to expand on certain segments that I wasn't able to before in the season 4 video. But I thought that was interesting to share, especially since like this house, because of it being destroyed, isn't going to play much of a part anymore. Somewhat of a random note, but I'm super happy with how Gigan and Rodan's voices didn't clash too much. And by clash, I mean sound exactly the same, which was a worry of mine, because the way I'm voicing them, because I voice both of them, their inflections are somewhat similar, but I'm happy that when I finally had them both speaking together, that they don't clash too much. And it's easy to tell who's speaking because, well, you know, their mouth is moving, but also because of their mannerisms and because Gigan has a more of a robotic voice. Even then, it's just, I was afraid of it sounding way too similar, and I think it's generally fine. Now, to be fair, I'm not saying it's the best contrast. All the voices in my series almost sound like identical, because they're all coming from the same guy. I do my best, somewhat. Except for when I have other voice actors on, like Hoot and Corey, which is super fun. Shout out to those guys. And to add to what I was saying about characters earlier, not to harken too much on that aspect, but I'm kid you not, it is actually super important for making videos like that. Now, in this behind the scenes video, I haven't gotten much into how I've animated all these things or even how I've sequenced out a lot of the story beats, because it's more so, it's pretty simple how these videos have functioned so far. But like I said, I put a lot of focus into what the characters are being built into. A lot of the problems of making these characters have actually arise from doing stuff in hindsight. That doesn't mean that you made up what your character's motivations are going to be in hindsight. You may have had the plan before you even started doing them, but you didn't plan for how you're going to show it, portray it, make it to where every single move of theirs reflects or doesn't contradict what they are supposed to be versus how they act on screen. That's something that a lot of news stories have nowadays, and that mine is no exception to. I have a lot of issues of, whether it's for the sake of humor or just not planning it out well enough, characters don't act in a way that's supposed to be building up on their character. If anything, I've had moments where they contradict how they're supposed to be in themselves. You need to make sure when you're going into a project like this that you are thinking ahead of how you are going to insert someone's motivation and character and that plan for who you want them to be into any and all of their actions. Now, I've done my best, and some of this stuff does sound obvious, but I kid you not, it does go a long way. A lot of good stories, proper character building, and proper rules to those characters goes a really, really long way. And that's something I hope to get way better at in the future. But like I said, this series in particular, especially since when I started this series, it didn't even start as a narrative, has had a lot of issues that I had to solve in hindsight. To go into some of my favorite aspects I wanted to talk about, I've already talked about how some of the character work in this video I was at least interested in finally getting some work done on, like especially with payoffs and stuff like that. That's why I haven't gotten too much into the sequencing of the video itself, is because I wanted to focus on the overall objectives of this episode specifically, on top of just being a fighting episode and entertaining, which is a whole other cookie to crack. But so I've already spoken on that, but another favorite aspect of mine was the humor. It's like, I always try to be somewhat funny, but I'm always afraid that jokes will take away from any story that it could be building. Like I said, you don't want to make a joke at the sacrifice of character. Sure, it'll be funny, but it might hurt your story in the long term. Some of the humor in this I was actually super happy with. Like I try to have designated funny people in it, but generally the way my series works is everyone will have their goofy moments, whether it's done to them or done to themselves. Mainly the stuff with Monkey and Cole I was super happy with, especially this sequence right here, which probably was one of the most fun to animate that I've done in a while. I'm super happy with the sequence of them trying to figure out how to get the ship to work. There's always a fun energy about Cole specifically that I always enjoy doing. And of course, Monkey is just often my fallback punching bag, to be honest. But he takes it like a champ. I try to make it in every single scenario. He does take being abused by the plot like a champ, because that's kind of how he is. He's very strong, he's very enduring. Cole is just one of those oppressors, if you will say. Other favorite scenes included the jump scare of Troy. I do think there's a way that I could have done it a little more effective, but that was actually a shock that I was wanting to lead up to for a very long time, and especially for what it can mean for the next part. So it technically is still a cliffhanger, even though it's halfway through the video. Monkey being upset that his home collapsed around him was super fun to do, which I do want to give more context to. I don't think I've led to it properly enough. Like I said, I'm going to go back and add scenes. But him being upset about the house is supposed to be somewhat representative of him being upset that his whole world right now is just being turned over. That's been his problem this entire season, is he was worried about this life that he's been creating up until this point falling apart, and he's realizing that it is. And it starts with him realizing that the house is gone and everything he's been building up is gone, but only for that to be worsened by the fact that the friend that he's been angry about the whole thing towards, which is more important in that part of his life, has just been taken away, and they have no way to get back to him. And he realizes that this friend that has partially been affected by the fact that he wanted to stay with the life that he was, is now in peril. Like, his attention almost completely switches just to that. At the end of the day, they would both compromise or even completely give up on what they want to save each other, because they are friends. That is how it works. Like I said, not everyone is going to see this video, and I'm fine with telling you guys what the some of the structural elements are of these videos, whether they're supposed to be obvious or not. I got to some pretty big payoffs in this video, which I was happy with. Specifically, the payoff where Ghidorah finally was able to get his third head back using the remnants of Mechagodzilla, which I've teased him doing since the very end of Season 3, and he's been slowly building him up in the background. So that finally came through, and for him to finally have his moment to shine. And as most people have pointed out, Noodleneck hasn't been the best in fights, so this also was supposed to be his moment of fighting and finally standing his own and winning a fight like this using the tools that he's now created. Building up to that for a while, so that was super fun to do. And like I said, generally a lot of the story beats of this episode I've been working towards since the beginning of the season over a year ago, so finally good to get those. But one of those big payoffs was the reveal of the cloning room, which all of the answers have not been given for yet, other than you know that the other people that are coming back from the dead are technically still dead. And another reason I was super happy with those aspects of the video is because I tried to be as least meaty with the dialogue as possible. So when Triangle is talking to Monkey inside of this place, I tried to keep the dialogue down to a minimum, because the idea is that if you've been following along, you can kind of put together what is going on by just seeing them inside of those tubes. I never had to say the word clones once, or at least I hoped I hadn't, and then a lot of people would understand what's going on. Not saying I was the most subtle with it. It's not them is a straight up statement that Monkey makes, but I felt I did not need to go into why that is such a existential crisis to be giving to your friends if you tell them that they are in fact dead and they are the clones. A lot of things like that, especially throughout the episode. I try not to be too overt with the dialogue, especially when it's an action episode. You don't really want that. I've tried to do that throughout the entire season to varying degrees of success, but I was kind of happy with this one in particular. And part 49. Now we go on to some of my least favorite aspects of these videos, because I'm very aware that my videos are not perfect, and a lot of the issues and stuff are either because of the limitations of like the way I make my videos, or they're just because of my improper planning, or skill, because I'm not the most qualified person to do this, but I will realize all these issues in hindsight, trust me. An overall thing is just expectation versus reality, which is, in my head, certain aspects of the videos will flow better than they actually do when I put it on paper. Or when I finally do decide to make these scenes and animate these scenes, they just don't end up turning out the way that I'm wanting to. But for the sake of time, I just can't harken on them too much. Now, this can all be combated by planning out videos a little better, which I could have done and I hope to do in the future when I have a better system of making these videos, but that's for later on. Another thing that would be helpful with planning the videos out better from this point forward, and maybe aiming towards shorter videos more often, would be just the fact that it would be a smarter business move, and also these videos wouldn't be so draining to create or so confusing to work on. And they wouldn't take, 2 months to get an episode out. Another thing that I will admit is a stupid aspect of the episode is the fact that Gigan and Rodan used the teleporter to get away. Now, I do have a scene earlier in the video, whether it's very brief, but of Rodan eyeing the remote and being near it so that he could pick it up. But it's the fact that he knows how to use it and at least pulls it up that ready, as if they've used the machines before. That's nonsensical. That doesn't make any sense at all. But that was just a case of, well, I didn't plan well enough for this, and I've already kind of committed. There were some other ways that I would have sequenced the scenes, but they would have kind of been awkward. So I sacrificed logic for flow in the videos, even though it's not even the best flow because the scene is just kind of confusing. I hope that all makes sense. It's not a very good thought out aspect of the video at all, and I knew it at the time and I know it now. Another thing like before, and to make this video full circle, is that the long is not a good thing. I'm working on these episodes for so long, adding so many aspects to them, so many payoffs, that I'm afraid because of the runtime of the videos or how few and far between they are, these moments are often forgotten, or at least not easily digestible when they're stacked one moment after another. Like I said, these last few episodes have been long, and they've been full. There are so many aspects to these videos, but that's almost presented in issue where I feel like when I'm making these videos that I don't have enough time to make those moments that really count, have some recognition or time to breathe. I'm doing this all the wrong way, but I wanted to do it all the wrong way so that part 50 would be entertaining. And I'll probably finish out the season that same way. Like I said, there's only going to be one more episode, and it's going to be one long, exciting one, is what the plan is. But after that, there may be a shift towards making shorter, more frequent episodes that involve a little more planning out for each of them and more care towards the individual scenes. Nothing's definitive for now, but I kid you not, that would be so much more beneficial to what I've been doing. And it's kind of how the series used to be. I've kind of set the expectation way too high for these videos. But I'm very happy to meet them a lot of the cases. Like I said, this finale will be a case of just continuing to ramp up what I have been making, because that is also part of the story. When you make a very complicated story with a lot of moving parts, you're going to have to make all of it. So unless I simplified the story a ton, it's going to be really hard to translate a lot of these ideas. Oh, and just so you all know, this season will be the longest by a long shot. Currently, estimated all the runtimes of the videos so far are still technically shorter than season 3, but even if the newest episode I'm working on, which will be the last one, will only be 5 minutes long, it'll then be the longest season I've made. So this season, because the video is definitely going to be longer than 5 minutes, will be the longest season I've made, along with the most interestingly paced. I'm super happy with how this season has turned out compared to the others. Like I said, each video I've made, so in this season specifically, I've felt very happy with how it turns out. I've made them very full, very dynamic, very fast paced, but that just takes time to do, which is why it's taken the longest to make this season overall as well, because it also is the longest, and to me, at least, the most exciting that I've made. And on top of that, my plan for the Season 4 video is to go back and change some aspects that I think could have helped the videos flow better, along with additional scenes that I wasn't able to get around for the sake of time and pacing before, with the episodic nature of the channel versus having it in a full season video. but I do plan to eventually get around to those contextual moments for Season 4 in the Season 4 video. So that's something that's going to be an add-on to the full Season 4 video. So that's going to make it even longer. This season's going to be very, very long. Anyway, that's kind of the end of my rambles. I hope something in this video was interesting. I know a lot of you guys are interested in the animation side of it, but a lot of the complications recently, or a lot of the notable stuff, especially with this video, didn't really spawn out of how the animation's been going. Even though on that end, there have been some interesting aspects to it, I just wanted to focus on some of the more relevant stuff to at least the process that has been the last couple episodes, especially part 50. Let me know if you want more videos like this. I'm currently working on part 51, and I may give you guys a couple teaser images that'll probably just be from the storyboard / animatic of it, because as of recording, it's still in early planning stages this episode. Trust me, it's been very complicated to try and figure out the whole thing, but hopefully the rest of the animation and stuff will go smoothly because of it. I'm super excited for you guys to eventually see that episode. I really hope you enjoyed this season up to this point, because like I said, the amount of time that it's taken for these episodes, I just hope that a lot of it can be somewhat appreciated for making this season so full and complicated, or at least the attempt has been there to improve the quality of the content, whether that's through the length of the episodes, the features and the events of the episodes, or the pacing of the episodes overall. Thank you so much for watching. I wish there was more to report on or more to talk on. If you have any other questions or interests that you want me to cover, I'd be very willing to. In the meantime, I've been enjoying making the quiet pumpkin. In the meantime, I've really enjoyed making the gaming videos, especially with my friends. They're more so for fun when I do them, but I'm really hoping that you guys enjoy them as well. And also let me know what you'd like to see more of. Conceptually, this channel was made to be the channel and platform for the extra stuff that isn't my mainline productions. And I've kind of evolved it into a place that I'm pretty happy with, like what I've been able to do on here, but at the same time I want to make sure it's what you guys are wanting as well. And I'm guessing you guys like the behind the scenes content, but let me know what you wish to see more of, or if you're just happy with the way that videos roll out currently. I plan to have another video out following up that Jurassic World video that I made after I watched Primitive War. There was more I wanted to talk on the subject because some of you guys had a little bit of a disagreement with what I thought, which I think is actually healthy. Not to just take everything at face value, but I'd like to expand on some of my thoughts. Anyway, this recording is way too long, so I'm just gonna end it very quick.